Hey, how's it going, everybody? Since we have a lot of new members in this group, I kind of wanted to put just to throw together a quick training here on the best way to use this group. So, as you know, it's a copy critique group based on what I learned from Gary Bencivenga. But I know a lot of people here, you have all different varying levels of skill. And you might not know the best way to critique copy, and that's fine. That's what this little training's for. So, yeah, it's just to make your copy better and to save us time and to make sure everybody kind of, everybody know, like, if you see really good copy, like, you can still help, okay? So, yeah, regardless of your experience level, I'm going to get into two methods of critiquing copy that anybody can use to start helping. You can use this on your own copy, and you can use this in this group to make your stuff just convert way better, all right? So the first one is the Gary Bencivenga persuasion equation. And this is something he taught in his $5,000 course. And it's something I think about every time I write copy and every time I look at copy. So he said, according to Gary Bencivenga, who, by the way, is without a doubt the greatest copywriter alive. I don't think he's ever been beaten in a control selling books for the huge publishers, and it's just like he has a ridiculous track record. Sold $9 billion, so he knows what he's talking about. Okay, so the first thing is an urgent problem, and an urgent problem, a bleeding neck, as Perry Marshall describes it. It makes your job of selling so much easier if they have urgency around what they want to solve or buy. And it's the very first thing I look for. The next thing is a unique solution. You might also call this a big idea or a mechanism, as Eugene Schwartz talked about. If you guys have no idea who that is, try to get your hands on either Breakthrough Advertising by Eugene Schwartz or Great Leads is a good one. It kind of ties into the same concept. And another one actually is cash advertising, because he talks about that stuff a bit. A unique mechanism is all it is it's like it's like the way that your product or solution delivers the result that's different than everyone else out there, and that's what people, when they see that or they hear your copy, or they read your copy, they'll say, okay, maybe this will help when everything else doesn't. All right, so it's just another way to deliver a promise, to deliver a promise or a result. So an undeniable proof is the main thing, like Gary Bencivenga's whole thing. Like if you read his copy, it's airtight. So if you look at a lot of copy, the proof is like, well, it's worked for me, so it'll probably work for you too. So there's if you read How to Write a Great Ad by Vic Schwab, there's about 20 different types of proof he gets into. Most people just use testimonials and social proof, but there's demonstrations, probably the best. There's demonstration, there's social proof. I'm not going to get into them all. There's like case studies and fucking statistics and all sorts of stuff. And maybe I'll throw up what do you call it? Like a proof section later. And an irresistible offer is obviously just make your offer so good that if they don't buy now, they're just going to feel stupid. All right. So let's move on. This is a copy of all four of those elements. If yes, good. Here's the next way you can actually critique body copy. As you can tell, I really practiced this presentation. So it's copy logic. And the book is written by Mike Palmer and the Agora guys. Agora is just a massive, massive business. If you don't know who they are, they're like the top of the direct response world. They hire the best copywriters, pretty much. And this is called the Cub test. It's the three killers: confusing, unbelievable, and boring. And I'll get into specific examples kind of in a second here. This is so important, as you'll see in a minute. So here's confusing. Telltale signs of confusing. It's drawn out. It's long-winded. You see that a lot, where people try to go into these crazy long explanations or these super long stories, and they get off on tangents. Or another thing is it's vague language. I should have thought of the examples of this stuff, but let's think of vague language. Like, I'll just move on. Like, not enough detail. Doesn't follow a logical order. That's a pretty easy one. You can usually tell when your sales letter is out of a logical order. For example, I wrote a VSL for a skincare company, and I was talking about one ingredient, and before I finished talking about that ingredient, I jumped to another ingredient, and then I later on in the copy I went back to the first ingredient. It just didn't make sense, which is one random example. Too many ideas at once is a big one. At Agora, they say, your copy should really just be focus on one idea, especially in the lead and the headline and stuff. And the rest of the copy kind of supports that idea and explains it. Confusing words, I try to write at a pretty a 4th or 5th grade level, depending on who I'm writing to. Confusing words, for example, I don't know, just anything over 3 syllables is going to be pretty confusing, and usually, so I try to keep it under that. But if you're writing for financial, I don't know, I haven't written for that market, so I'm not even going to go into it. And then there's esoteric, and just esoteric stuff is, it's basically like woo. Well, it's hard to kind of describe here. Maybe I should Google it. Siri, describe esoteric. Never mind. I'm just going to go on. Esoteric would be like talking about like mechanisms in copy. If you were brand new and you're talking about mechanisms and big ideas and stuff, you'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? So that's kind of esoteric stuff. You just want to make sure that you're always talking in a language that your market understands. And never take for granted that they might not understand you. So just explain what you're talking about as you go. Now, unbelievable. There's a few things you need to watch out for. So lack of specifics. That's a big one. So it's like, oh, you're going to hit the golf ball farther than ever. Well, it helps a lot to throw in specifics in there. And then no proof supporting your claims. So as soon as you make a claim or a benefit, I try to throw in some kind of proof or like a research or something backing it up, or even like a reason why. So it's like, well, you're going to hit the ball farther than ever once you learn how to fix your golf swing in the downswing or something like that. And this creates more speed, Then there's unbelievable explanations, and an unbelievable explanation kind of, it's self-explanatory, but it just, your prospect has a really developed bullshit sensor or bullshit detector, and how you're explaining how your product works just doesn't sound right, you can usually tell it's not going to sell as much. Not enough facts, that's pretty. Sometimes you can have too many facts, so you got to kind of balance it, and it ties into the next part too, the boring. But you can't tell your facts in a boring way. They have to kind of. You have to kind of present your facts when your reader is saying, prove it. As they're going around, you kind of have to put yourself in your reader's shoes and just imagine what they're thinking when they're reading your stuff. And forgetting to establish your credibility. This is actually another part of copy logic, actually. And they said they found that their sales or their promotions weren't doing as well as their competitors, and then they analyze theirs compared to their competitors, and they're like, oh, they had this big section explaining why you should listen to the person, or like why you should listen to the expert, and why, you know, why the company is reputable and why the person writing is reputable. So that's a big part. And then there's not citing reputable sources. Like this should be self-explanatory, but if you're like, yeah, I learned this on Wikipedia, like, according to Wikipedia, like, you know, just find, it's easy. It's so easy to find studies and stuff from whatever it is, just to find studies from reputable sources backing up your shit. Moving on. So they say people will let you get away with everything except boring them. So these are some things I kind of keep in mind when I'm writing copy. So is the copy relevant to the audience I'm talking to, or is it, because the first point is actually pretty important, because you can get, when you're in your research process, you can basically, you're taking in so much information that you're like, oh, like I should talk about this, I should talk about that. And sometimes you just go way over the head of your audience, or it just has nothing to do with them at some point, and you're just including it because you think maybe your client told you to include it. And this is stuff you got to watch out for, because your reader's going to read it and be like, well, I don't care. And they're just going to close the window or throw your letter away or whatever it is. And I think I actually mentioned the next point in the confusing thing, but, you know, are you getting to the point, or are you going off on tangents? Because that stuff's boring to the reader. If you're not getting right to the point, they'll just be like, well, fuck this. I'm not wasting my time to like stick around and see what he's talking about here. And like a good example is a friend of mine. He sent me a sales letter, and that it was selling investments, or he was helping landowners sell their land or something like that. And his headline was raw lobster and steak or something. I was like, what the fuck does that? You know, he's like, well, it's going to have to make them read because it's a curiosity thing, but at the same time, you could probably just get right to the point with those people, and they would appreciate it because they're busy. I would assume they're busier anyway if they owned a lot of land. So you got to really keep in mind is your the person you're writing to, which is this copy 101 really. And then they're spending too much time on a boring subject. This is probably a lot more. Well, this probably happens a lot more in financial markets and different kind of markets like that. Where like, oh well, you go into like the history of the company, or you go into like why, whatever, like the certain widget was created and blah blah blah. That's a killer. Talking about stuff the reader already knows, and if you're writing content, this is just like a side kind of tangent. If you're writing content, and the very first thing is, let's say it's like you're talking to the dating market and you're talking to guys, let's just say that you have 5 tips to improve your confidence with women, or 5 tips to get a girlfriend or something like that, or that, whatever it is. And then the very first tip is, oh, you should be more confident or something. You know, it's like they already heard that and they're just going to close the window, or it's the same thing. And this goes with copy too, so you got to watch out for that. What does your reader already know? Do you have to talk about it? Maybe you can briefly mention it, but then say, here's why this matters. And yeah, that's just another one. And then you could, I always look to try to say more and less words and simplify my copy. For example, this last golf video sales letter I wrote, it started off with, my first draft was 18 pages. My second one was 10 pages. So I just edited the living hell out of it and just said way more with less. And that's something I think really helps with making your copy less boring. And then using concrete, tangible language as opposed to the confusing, like, fluffy language. And actually, this is the concrete, tangible language thing is probably better off in unbelievable or the confusing, but whatever. This, like I said, I did not rehearse this. So let's move on. Oh, good. It's out of my thing here. Boom. So here are 2 simple ways to make critiquing your copy easier on everyone in the group. So the first one is to present 2 versions, because as I say here, it's way easier to ask which of these 2 is stronger compared to, do you like this copy? Like, is it good? Like, what would you change? So that's one option. And then option 2 is if you have a longer piece of copy, just basically just give us which section of it you want to critique. So if it's a sales letter, you can do the headline and lead, or you can to critique the story or the bullets or the price justification or the close, etc. Because we're all busy and we don't really have time to critique your whole letter. And then I guess there's another part to that. When you put your copy up, just say who is your target audience for this, what's your offer, and what traffic source are you using to get them. That'll help. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. I guess you could do the last test to help the critique going is imagine that you're the reader. So just go back to, let's say it's a golfer again. And it's like, imagine you're a golfer and you're critiquing this copy, as you're critiquing this copy, sorry, and you just read every line, and you do the classic "so what" test, or like bullshit test. Is every single line relevant to something you care about? And this is you hear a lot of people suggest you do this. But the reason is it works. This is what really helped me basically tighten up my copy for golf a lot, and which is pretty hard since I have no idea I've never golfed or anything. But anyway, I think this has gone on too long. Hopefully this helps the critiquing process and you guys got something out of this. And yeah. Welcome to all the new members in this group. Feel free to start, what's the word? Participating. That's it. Sorry, I'm having a brain fart today. Anyway, yeah, feel free to start participating, and I'll talk to you guys soon, all right? Hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it for you. And yeah, see you soon. Bye.